The Working Artist Project is brought to you by Second Line Arts Collective. Learn how you can support at secondlinearts.org.
We're creating a platform for those who are curious, one that tells the story from the artist's perspective. Moments in time, captured from the innovators who are reshaping dance, music, theater, and the visual arts. This is the Working Artist Project.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Working Artist Project. Today is April 11th, 2022, and I hope you all are doing well. Mr. Darrian Douglas, how are you?
Yo, Greg, I'm good, man. Believe it or not, I'm back in New Jersey, everybody. I was in New Orleans last week, right behind Greg, you know. You can see Greg's butt right behind my head. It was great, man. I had a good time, man.
I wouldn't have exactly phrased it like that, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying after some reflection.
Yeah, man.
It's always nice having you in town. Let me tell you, it's New Orleans has changed a lot, and it always feels like it did back in the day when you're in town.
Man, you know, remember when we was 22? It was great. Or you was 22. I was probably 20, 24 or 25 or something.
Some good times. Well, I think thankfully for us and the rest of the world, we've grown up a little bit. So
yeah, you're right, bro. All right, let's get right into it because we got a dope guest I want to tell everybody about. But before we do that, we gotta pay all the bills. First of all, this podcast is brought to you by Isotope. You like that voice? Yeah.
That's the chip voice.
So dig it. We have the Svetlanas Music Workshop happening June 6th through June 17th. And if you know a young person who's interested in honing their craft as a musician and also polishing up their business skills, send them our way down to New Orleans, Greg. What else you got to tell them about that?
Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic camp experience. It'll be 2 weeks starting on June 6th. And we have the fantastic Marquise Hill coming in from Chicago to be our guest artist. We also have the wonderful Jason Marsalis coming to join us. And as we get closer to camp, we will be announcing some more guest artists who will represent the music industry community here in New Orleans. So again, one of the things that we really wanted to emphasize is not only making these young people wonderful musicians, but we want to give them the exposure and the skills necessary to make it in the industry. So we've been, over the last couple of years, we've been bringing in industry professionals, film composers, booking agents, managers, and many other people in the fields. So, we'll be announcing those as we get closer to camp.
Yeah, y'all. And just so y'all know, we're one of a kind. We're one of the very few, definitely one of the first to do it the way we do it. So check it out at secondlinearts.org. Click on Svetlanas Music Workshop and go ahead and sign up. All right, the business is over. It's time to talk about our guest, Greg. Do you know who this person is? Well, you know, I'm gonna tell you anyway. I'm not even gonna let you answer, Greg.
No, let me say this. I've been hearing about our guest for a long time, and I believe I did get a chance to. I think we played right before her when I was playing with the Swamp Donkeys. This was ages ago, but she's always in the forefront of my mind. She's always playing with all my friends up in New York. So I'm excited to get a chance to talk with this cat. That's
right. So today's guest is the one and only Svetlana. She's one of those people who go by one name, you know, like Prince, you know, Stevie, you know, stuff like that. She to me, I admire her because she is a true visionary and a self-starter, you know. So she's one of the few people that I do know that has a PhD. And it's not even in music. I'm gonna let her tell y'all about that a little. It's in organizational management, but we can get into that later. And maybe that's something that fuels her business sense. She went to the Manhattan School of Music. She also recently started a program called Swing Makes You Sing. And she's teaching kids pre-K through 12th grade all over the world about our great music, this music that we call jazz, you know. I like to call it BAM, but some people call it jazz. So without further ado, why don't we welcome the one and only Svetlana to the Working Artist Project. What up, Svetlana? You there?
Yay. Hi.
How you doing? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm glad that I did not forget to unmute myself. That's the first.
Yeah, it's rough, man. Like, you know, everybody we're on Zoom right now for the people who are listening on a podcast later. So we do this thing live every Monday night via Zoom, so we can connect with people around the world. And sometimes folks forget to most of the time I forget to hit my unmute, but you know what I'm saying? I'm getting old, Svetlana. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you. I'm there with you.
So, Dig It, I kind of want to start at the end and then work our way backwards. And I want to start with Swing Makes You Sing, because I feel like that's the most recent project that you're working on. And it's a similar space that we work on with our program, Little Stompers. And we do some of the same stuff, you know, and we raise money some of the same ways. And a lot of times you'll be sending me grants and this and that, sign up for this. These people want to give you money. What kind of inspired you to step into the music education space after being a performer for so long?
It's you.
Hey.
All right. Well, the story goes like that, you know, a bird drops on your lap, and hopefully it's a bird and not bird drops. See what I did there? And you kind of pick it up. I remember that conversation you and I had during the pandemic when this organization, Midori and Friends, approached artists. And it sounds really grandiose, but really was a really amazing, fantastic friend who said, hey, you know, I have this opportunity for musicians to present, you know, educational projects. And it was one of those things. You and I talked and you said, hey, you know, throughout the history, for all the peoples, all the ages, there were challenges, and some people persevered due to ingenuity and innovation and quick thinking or running really fast, you know. So which one are you good at? And you know, you did inspire me and encourage me, because I didn't even know how to use Zoom at that point, to be frank. And I'm pretty technology savvy, but it was just not something that I've ever got myself into. And, you know, when we were touring or doing performances here in the city, we always tried to do informal kind of education. But when that opportunity came along, it was a matter of, you know, productizing it really and packaging it and making it into something that was sellable, that was a product, as opposed to, hey, you know, I have those skills and I have those ideas. And it was basically, I asked, so when do we start? I was told, you know, in a month, kind of in a nutshell. And I sat down and taught myself some video editing skills and went out and had guys record a lot of iPhone videos. I told them exactly what to do. I remember one of the artists who I adore sent me like a half-hour video, and I said, well, actually, I meant 3, not 30 minutes, you know, and we were in business. So from that point on, I was kind of realizing that, you know, it really did change kids' days for the better. I have my own children who were staring at the screen, you know, the whole day, and trying to share the knowledge, but also, frankly, share the joy, because that time really, really sucked for kids. And then hopefully kind of slowly starting to come to realization that we can move it forward in other ways, and be that through grants or live presentations or other type of opportunities.
Would you mind kind of digging into maybe what a class looks like in your organization, and like what it is exactly that you are trying to share with the young people?
Mm-hmm. From the very beginning, I mean, I do have a pretty extensive background in education. And one thing outside of music, my first degree is actually in teaching mathematics. So I was a math teacher for a little bit in high school. But then I also have a pretty extensive background in informal kind of cultural education, again, outside of music. So when we talk about teaching, usually there are three outcomes we look at, and that's knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors, right? And so when it comes to knowledge, like, can we really teach in that short time, like in-depth musical concept with this program? Or can we take a couple concepts and just like keep repeating them in different ways and hoping it sticks? Yes. Then there's attitudes. And that's really, for me, was, at least for that first iteration of the program, the main learning outcome, if you will. And that is kids coming out saying, I like jazz, and also feeling uplifted. So that was the other kind of, goal. And behaviors are usually the hardest thing to hit. Like, usually if you're teaching a, instrumental lesson, maybe it could be that a kid practices, or they know how to do a certain thing. So that's really not something we were hoping to address. So with that, I really kind of picked the lowest hanging fruit and just created content that was sort of overview of jazz and was something that I have taught, in schools before, or as when I was a Manhattan School of Music school, we went out to public schools. So we just kind of take three ingredients of jazz, like that's a pot, and there's your blues, your swing, right, your improvisation, and we talk about the origins of jazz in New Orleans. And then another thing, because my band has played a lot for dancers, I thought it would be cool to introduce movement as a core part of the program as well. So I've enlisted, tap dancers and swing dancers to kind of teach kids the moves. But really, it was not to teach the moves, but have the kids get up and move and get the adrenaline, going and kind of come out happier from this 40 minutes in front of the screen. So this kind of in a nutshell what the program is about today, but with more funding and more opportunities, hoping to develop other modules, but that's kind of the thing.
I love what you said too. It's like part of the classroom experience is bringing joy, and
Yeah.
and sometimes as a serious musician, I forget about that in the classroom. So I'm so anxious about, I want to teach you all about Louis Armstrong, but it is truly one of the most important aspects of creating these types of educational outreach opportunities is remembering that the kids are in school and they want to have fun. They want to talk to their friends. They want to learn about things, and they just want to, they don't want it to be math class or science class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always tell cats who work with us, the number one thing is fun. Especially the younger kids. It's like, if it's high school, okay, yeah, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna also learn a lot. But if it's like first graders, like, I'm okay if we just dance all day and they remember one thing, Louis Armstrong. Yeah, to me, that's a success, I'm curious. I just want to ask you a question, and I want you to answer this as humbly as possible. Are you a genius?
No. Oh my God. Oh my God. You're kidding me.
I'm just saying, for somebody to get a degree in mathematics, and then you went to school got a master's in music, right? And then a PhD in organizational management. That just seems like you were just like interested in a wide array.
And don't forget the degree that brought me here to the US, which was master's degree in nonprofit management. Oh,
see what I'm saying? You're not bullshitting. We need to hire you.
Bring it in.
That's what I mean. Like, how
come?
Yeah. Why?
I think honestly, it's just how my life turned out, as opposed to some grand plan that I had. And there are advantages to that path and disadvantages. I mean, I think since I was little, really what I was drawn to a lot was art in all its expressions. Visual art first, very much so. I think when you look at yourself, or now I look at my kids and I see what really lights up your spirit, it's kind of what you loved doing as a kid, right? And I was making art for hours. I mean, you couldn't have I was getting little, sticks and making dolls from it and making doll houses out of matchboxes, like really miniature, tiny crafts and drawing and stuff like that. And then when music came into play, I really enjoyed and really was drawn and could practice forever, not in a traditional way, but like learn songs and listen to a line by Ella. I didn't know anything about jazz, but just loved it so much and like trying to emulate it and repeat it. Um, but my life took me in a different way. My parents are, my father was born during the Second World War, right? So their parents went through real starvation, like, and real hardship of real war. So for them, they had this core, protective thing about, you really got to do something. Believe it or not, my parents were telling me as I was growing up, the reason you need to learn the piano is because when the war starts, right, everybody is going to be sent to the front line and you could sit back and teach kids, piano. And so that was the context in which the art was allowed as this other ammunition, but really you have to go and do something useful because everybody else is going to be thrown off, overboard. So I chose math because I think music and math mindsets are related. It is a system, of 12 tones and there's logic to it. So I loved math. I was really good at it. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll go study math. And I loved the social aspect and I'll study teaching. But then Russia, we were kind of all lost when we graduated. Russia was going through a huge change. Soviet Union fell apart. I went and became a school teacher, but the educational system was also falling apart. A lot of it was old, kind of very authoritarian, controlling style of teaching. And for a young person that has already started to taste kind of the new freedoms, it was difficult to be part of that system. So I kind of fell into the world of nonprofits back there, in a cultural nonprofits, kind of organizing cultural events, activities. And then an opportunity presented itself to come here because US was trying, it's part of cultural diplomacy, right? US was bringing people here, giving people degrees with a hope of sending them back to build open society, democratic societies. Well, look how well that turned out. And I came here a very young person. I came all by myself. I landed in East Village. Okay. I was going to the new school, getting my degree in nonprofit management. There's just no way that I would go home. I just fell in love with the city. The art was all around me. Music was all around me. And I was getting this degree that was so easy, after getting my math degree. And I was able to stay. And then again, I was at this point in life, I didn't know what to do next. So I was like, okay, I'll go do more school. And Columbia University accepted me in a doctoral degree program. And I kind of like went with the flow. So that's kind of that story. But when I came back years later to being a musician, at some point I realized that it was not enough to learn on the gigs, and I wanted to do more than being a singer, in front of the band. And kind of, I don't know exactly what it was, but what possessed me, it was really the hardest thing ever. In some ways I'm still recovering. But I went back and got another degree, really with the point of trying to learn some basics and fundamentals really, really fast.
I think it's so interesting that you have these areas of expertise in so many different areas of life. And you also seem to have a lot of patience because, learning all those things, especially as we get older too, at least just from my perspective, and I'm sure you could probably enlighten me to what your experience was like. But, I'm 35 now, and the thought of going back to school and learning something new kind of terrifies me. And And I'm just wondering, like, how do you stay enthusiastic about challenging yourself in new ways?
Mm.
And like, how did, like, again, like, do you feel like you have a specific talent or gift that maybe manifests through all of these different challenges and experiences that you've been through?
Well, thanks. uh, um, I don't know. I'm a dreamer.
Mm,
I think things up and then kind of pursue them with inhuman strength. I, you know, even staying here, for example, was a near impossible task. Um, and I just really, really wanted it. And I saw myself here. I really felt like I fit here so much more than I fit back home in some ways.
mm,
And I just invented a legitimate way to stay. And so in a similar way, I went to take a class at this institution in New York called the New York Jazz Academy. It's sort of like amateur jazz, program. And I was working as a management consultant by day, and I started taking those classes there, like improvisation with this guitar player Tom Dempsey, and you know uh, other things. And I took a lesson with Carolyn Leonard, and it was a master class. She's a daughter of Jay Leonard, the bass player. And I saw all these people in that class who were significantly older than me, and they were amateurs, And I just got this. I saw myself in them as a potential path of life. That there's something that I desire so much, but I'm not able to do well. And I don't know. I just experienced this kind of out of body experience, almost like a fear of death. Like I wanted to really pursue this. It was a turning point for me. And that desire, I guess, fueled my energy around finding gigs, like, driving 3 hours to make no money, to only lose $100, and just continuing, um, pursuing different degrees and whatever else. So I don't know. It's dreaming something up and kind of wanting it very much and finding a way to make it happen.
I
I
think it's
like. Sorry, Greg. I was just gonna say that I like what you said before. It's like you embody this the sense of purpose of like with inhuman strength. And to me, like like we have these set of values here at Second Line Arts Collective,
Mhm.
and one of them is perseverance.
Hmm.
And I have yet to meet a person who has attained any level of success that hadn't mastered perseverance.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you draw that from your grandparents, your parents, right? Where they went through this war and they assumed that there would be another war. And it seems like there just might be another one. And I kind of also want to get your opinion
Oh
on that.
God.
As I
Yeah.
mean, as a Russian
Yeah.
expat, that's your home country. I'm just curious, like, how does it feel? How does that feel to see what is, in my opinion,
Mhm.
uh, one of the worst atrocities that has happened to the world as I'm living and breathing,
Mhm.
other than America doing the same shit in the Middle East.
Mhm.
Like, how does that feel? Because as an American, I'll tell you this: watching this stuff in the Middle East, I felt brainwashed to be like, okay, cool, that's over there, that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with me.
Right.
I'm just curious if that's the same feeling. Do you feel that that's the same thing that's happening with Russians as we switch gears
No,
to
that's
another
fine.
topic here? Yeah.
Well, first of all, you have to understand my perspective. To get into the detail, I am a refugee myself. So the way I was able to stay here was to request a status of an asylee. And that is because my background is Jewish, and Jewish people were not treated in a friendly way And that was not really based on religion, but really more on heritage. So whether you call it ethnicity or race, or I know it's a completely different meaning than it would be in the US, but it had nothing to do with your religious beliefs. It was more really based on a, gene test, if you will. And so, or on your face, and looking very, very different from people around you. So me and most of the people of Russian heritage that you would meet here would have been refugees from Russia. So for me to look back right now, today, and to see the atrocities, and it's beyond painful, but also I can just say, I mean, that's what that's what the state has been doing to a lot of people's, for centuries. So I don't know how else to say it. It's horrible because it's ridiculous, because in many ways, this people, the Ukrainian people and Russian people, their faith over centuries is so overlapped. The language is so much almost the same. It's both Orthodox Christian, nations, though Ukrainian, a part of Ukrainian population is a, Ukrainian Catholic. So I don't know what to say. I feel very connected to it, not to mention that I have friends and family in the Ukraine. I have family that is writing to me from the bunkers, and men are not allowed to leave, and therefore wives and children, some of them are choosing to stay. I mean, I do feel that this war is happening to me, and I of course have family that is still in Moscow, and most people that I know don't support the war, but it's like we're back in the 30s where any sort of dissent is harshly persecuted. So I look at the news too much, but I also can't not look. One friend told me, I suggest turn off the TV, or the news or whatever, the channels where you're getting this news. But I feel like I can't, because I can miss the possibility of knowing how I can help. And, in addition to money and different resources, I do feel that I have to share information with people, because I don't think there's very good understanding here about the nature of this war, and it will come here in some way. I mean, look at your gas pump. It's already here. Like, you're paying $1 or $1.50 more for gas. But besides from economic impact, it will have other impact on our lives. So I don't know. I mean, it's a giant topic. So I apologize if I'm not, as concise as when I'm talking about pursuing my jazz
Totally
degree.
cool. It's definitely a giant topic. One thing, and I'll let Greg chime in on this, but that I was thinking was just how your education was freedom. And a lot of times people in America think about economic freedom. The more education you get, you're going to have you can move up class wise, but yours was, in my opinion, seems like literal freedom. Like you were able to escape a bad situation, or a situation that you were like, wait, this might get worse for me later or something,
For me and for my kids, and for, once I remember the day I stepped through the gates of JFK. It was a beautiful August day. It was August 22. And autumn in New York is just, the best, and it lasts forever. In Moscow, and I like Moscow. I love Moscow as a town, but autumn in Moscow is like 3 days, and then it's cold and raining. And I walked in through the doors of JFK, that automatic glass doors, they opened, and I landed in East Village, and everybody was weird and nobody cared. And this idea that you can be different and it's okay, it's like a ton of bricks was lifted from my chest. Now, especially being a jazz musician and especially learning more about the history of this country, as the years were passing by, I have learned and got to appreciate, again, especially in the context of the music that we're playing, that it's not like that for everyone. And what it takes for this country to kind of find its consciousness. But what I'm trying to say, that for me personally, there was no question that freedom is here for me and not there, you know?
How do you think your upbringing in Russia and maybe your closeness to those experiences with life and death and maybe like, again, economic crisis and things of that, that seems to be a unique experience that a lot of Americans, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people who do experience that on a day-to-day basis, but I don't think the majority story or the American story is very attached with that, at least in the last 50 or so years. How have those experiences influenced like the way you see America and the way you walk through society here? And do you feel like, yeah, how has that benefited you, or has it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think growing up, without like being too heavy on the sob story, you know, look, there was just a generational trauma that was carried. My grandmother was the one of two girls who was accepted in this gymnasium, like a school for girls in her town of Jewish descent. In other words, only two Jewish girls were allowed. Okay, so there was a quota, right? So she had to pass all the exams better than all her Jewish friends, right? And be on top to get this one of two spots, okay? And that's a story that I knew, right? And then, of course, my grandfather, you know, telling us the stories of pogroms, which is, you know, people descending on their little Jewish village and just like indiscriminately killing, raping, and was an infant, you know, and barely survived, right? Because he was crying and like they were like, should we suffocate him or will he shut up? Okay, he shut up. So, and then of course the Second World War, which is when they became young people, and my grandma giving birth in a barn, you know, in evacuation when they moved all the people out of big cities. They were in Moscow by then. And then being a 5-year-old girl, and we had a little shack outside the city called dacha. And dacha is this like a little country house. Or when you say country house, don't imagine like a little no running water, but we loved it. We could come out in the summers. And as we were leaving and kind of closing for the winter, my grandma drinking milk. And she said, until she finishes this jug of milk, like this size, she can't go because she experienced hunger. She almost died of hunger at some point. And I grew up carefree and happy, but those experiences were all around me. Or, you know, my brother not being accepted to university of his choice because he was Jewish. So you can't blame me for wanting to get the hell out of there. But also, I think it does. I mean, all of those stories are stories of survival. My grandma lost so much weight. She was like a plump, pretty lady before the war. And she lost so much weight during the war that when her husband came back from the war, having not seen her for 5 years, he was like, hey, young lady, have you seen my wife by the name of Esther? He's like, dude, that's me. So I think it creates sort of a layer of survivalism, you know, that even though I have not experienced those things, I certainly experienced harassment. I certainly experienced, you know, needing to do the best of everybody else in the class to get the same, you know. And I think coming over here and feeling some of this stress physically, like you don't know certain stresses until they lift up. But also having this, survivalist ability to just push and change and adjust as things fly your way. I think the downside is that it's tiring, and that there's a cost to it. But, I think in a society like America, where being a go-getter and working really, really hard, and like, in the words of great Darrian Douglas, the ingenuity and perseverance, it's just, we all came prepackaged with that. That served me and people like me well, coming over here. That's why you see a lot of people, a lot of people of Russian Jewish background who came over in the same or similar way, succeeding here, because in a way the system is built for us. And then you learn that the system is not built like that for everyone. And that's a whole other reckoning to go through,
Absolutely. I was gonna say, this is, I'm having a great time. I don't know how y'all feeling, but
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this because we're uncovering your story or some, your history or your herstory, and in a way that highlights why you are a self-starter and why you do persevere until you get to the final goal. And it resonates with me because I have a different story, but similar in some ways, of people just, not having running water, but fucking going to college. Like, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? In America. So like that resonates with me in such a heavy way. And I feel like I've known you for years, but now I feel like we're getting even closer now, because I'm like, okay, I understand why you're relentless, and why you're just like, because when you have a history of people who have to go through these types of things, you can't quit, because you like, they didn't go through that shit for me to have a bad day and cry in a corner. You know what I mean? Like, how would my grandmother feel if she just saw me quit because somebody said no? Or for me to like halfway try. So you can't do that. So it's a beautiful thing to see that from you, and to understand your story a little bit better. I do think you're a genius, though.
Oh, stop! No, I'm so not. Growing up, the genius was my brother. He was like the guy who, with photographic memory, just math galore, and he went on to have a life of a genius. So I was this like wildflower. Nobody bothered me, which I think also had impact on me being developing this creativity and making stuff from sticks and matches and creating this like imaginary world. So it's interesting. It's an interesting implication for now being a parent, like how much you control and how much you just let go. And hopefully kids are able to just be creative and enjoy themselves. But yeah, thanks.
I was going to say too, as you were recounting the story of your experience in Russia and your grandparents, my family was a Jewish Polish family, and the same thing, around the same time. They moved to France because of the persecution that was happening in Poland, and we changed our last name to Agid, and actually like ceased being Jewish at that point. And it's funny because just hearing, both my parents are from Europe, and I'm first generation American, but yeah, the word survival like really resonated with me too, because I think a lot of times, like as Americans, we forget that a lot of like our parents grew up in post-war World War II Europe, and that was a very hard time for everyone out there. And that led to a strong sense of like resilience in those people. And I commend you too, because I think the not everyone has translated that into opportunity. Maybe like because I can kind of see it into my family too, just the it's a little bit more challenging to get out of the survival mindset, I think, is kind of where I'm coming from with that. And being in a place like America that doesn't have that story, but you still have that generational trauma and story with us. So it is a challenge to get through that stuff. But it ultimately does. You know, we have to, every what is it? The light comes in through the wound, or what is it, this quote like that? But I guess those experiences are the things that hopefully can turn into opportunity for all of us. But maybe it would be cool to transition a little bit into more of the musical side of your life. And you know, I think something that's like been very impressive for me down here in New Orleans is that I've been hearing your name on a consistent basis for the last 10 years or so. And
Oh no.
no, but it's even in New Orleans, it's been, yeah, I've known about you for a long time through my friends, but also I know that you do a lot of touring, and you do a great job of getting your name out there. And so in hearing this story, it makes a lot of sense as to how, you know, you've had all these different experiences that have all contributed and come together to like helping you create this jazz career, this career as a vocalist. And maybe I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about like how, again, like maybe like what inspired you to pursue music as a profession, not only as a hobby, and also how all these random things have contributed to like getting the career going.
I think, you know, I'd be lying again if I said that I had a master plan, you know. And I think it's just the little pieces of mosaic, you know, that just, and luck, you know, and being there with ready when the luck, you know, shakes your hand. Again, if I look back to, it goes back to the same thing. I think I was just, what really lit me up in a way that I could, you know, I had goosebumps, I could experience physically, was art and making art. Even when I'm on tour, it's going to sound extremely pretentious, but, you know, I always like get out and see visual art and like try to engage with art in other way, like in a museum, whatever, local Columbia Museum of Modern Art or whatever. And it always fed me in a different way throughout. Even when I was pursuing my math degree, okay, I was in a choir and I was in a theater group and I was singing. Like I would go through my 8 hours of math and then do another 4 or 5 hours of creative stuff, right? And I was always known as the girl who sings, okay? Like it was never on a back burner. And when I finally, so even when I came here, immediately I sought out Janet Lawson, who was a vocal teacher at the New School, and this other, you know, jazz vocalist. And I was taking lessons all throughout. And then I, you know, met this musician and we were doing little shows, even as I was traveling the country doing management consulting. So I just, like I said, taking that class with Carolyn Leonard and just more so seeing the people who made a different choice just scared me so much that I felt again, just in my body, this jolt, like it's now or never. Like I have to either try this, and once I decided, someone asked me at that time, when you think of yourself as in 10 years from now, and you think of yourself sitting at a desk as a consultant, what does this fill you with now that you've discovered again that you would like to pursue music? Alternatively, how do you feel seeing yourself doing the music? And just the answer was very clear, you know, dread, you know, extreme joy. So I kind of went with the joy. And once I decided, kind of, it didn't become easy, but I was like, oh, gigs are all around me. I could really literally play in New York every day of the week. Like the opportunities, my professionalism, and my, you know, that I could follow up with things and put an email together and put all this in service of my passion. It all came together. You know, I continued taking lessons with Tom Dempsey in improvisation, with JD Walter in in vocals and improvisation, and then, went to school. So I think, I don't know if that answers your question, but it all came from just really wanting it, and just the life pieces coming together to support it.
Had you dug into like improvisation before living in New York, or was that something new to you?
I did, because after I finished my math degree, I literally went ahead and started another degree, which was there was a small independent school. I know, it's so sick how I like being in school.
Love it.
I mean, I think I just wanted to be close to music in any way I could. And I knew how, it was not like there were jazz clubs in every corner in Moscow, but I knew there was a program where like jazz musicians hung out and taught other jazz musicians. So I entered the program. It was Moscow College of Improvised Music, which was like a not accredited kind of associate degree. I didn't care about degree, but I went maybe 3 nights a week. And yeah, studied jazz history, improvisation, learned solos. It was very light kind of education, but it definitely progressed me further in the knowledge of music. And, I did have my classical piano for 7 years. So it was translating some of those concepts into jazz theory and things like that.
I want to ask you one more question before we get out of here. And this might take us down a rabbit hole, but
I hope it does.
If you could, as an academic,
Yeah.
if you could change one thing in jazz education,
Oh God.
for the better, and I'm talking about higher learning here, what would it be?
Okay. Nobody knows how to teach vocalists. And I think I'm not an arrogant person, but when I know, I know. And I will tell you, my experience being at Manhattan School of Music was horrible. Okay. It started from the fact that I was really not prepared, like other kids who just graduated, like this little geniuses who just came from, little Emmett Cohen's and Benny Benacks and, I don't know, Mercedes Beckman's. Mercedes went on to be in an army band, like she was 5, but played like a devil. But they really didn't know what to do with vocalists. And they kind of just threw different things at us. But for me, I can only talk about what I've experienced. They were just so arrogant. They were like, we pride ourselves in treating vocalists like instrumentalists, but they didn't. I think the best thing to do, at least for me, would have been, and kind of why I came to school, in addition to classes like arranging with Jim McNeely, who was brilliant and such a kind and generous educator, or Phil Markovitz, styles of jazz also. It's actually immersing vocalists in the bands of all kinds and really, really having this intense experience. Like Ella Fitzgerald, she didn't go to school, she learned on the road. So create this compressed experience that is not really self-guided in that, you could have gotten to jam sessions, but very intense playing. It's like when we graduated, Curtis and I were joking, okay, now let's go relearn how to play our instrument because we're doing homework for 2 years. Way too much homework, very little playing. And also, I would say that a friend of mine asked me, so who are the faculty, the vocal faculty? And at that time, the people who were at MSAM, I listed them. And they asked me, are there any actual jazz singers that teach? They were artists, very contemporary singers, but somehow it was assumed that people know how to swing, that people understand the history and the tradition and can translate it into the modern language, but there was not a real jazz singer to actually guide the very genre that we were getting the degree in, which was jazz. It was not contemporary music degree, it was a jazz degree. So I would say this separation of, via the lack of faculty of, the actual jazz from the jazz education, which is what I have experienced, the lack of opportunity to actually play a lot, not, oh my God, I have a semester and concert, but on a daily basis. And, lack of understanding of what it takes to have a jazz vocalist that is educated in master's degrees. I guess these are the things that come to mind. The last thing I would say is also lack of music business education as part of, that degree. I did not necessarily feel like I missed out because I had an idea, but, basic things like royalties and, how you publish, that part, I had to learn, how do you release a record? Those things were just not even present. And
God forbid musicians have any business acumen and start negotiating their rates and signing contracts.
We're all little small businesses, but it was very much geared. It felt like there were, an elite few, and the rest of the program, it was like they're gonna go on to be musicians and artists, and so therefore we're going to teach the rest of you the same way. But the reality is it's not like that. And the rest of us, we run the small businesses, us being our business. And the fact that there was no business education as part of the degree, that seems bizarre. So
I agree.
I agree too. I mean, it's a tough thing because it's, again, like, I'm sure as we can all agree that learning music takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and is, it just takes time. That's it. But at the same time, it's like, what are you going to do if you can play music and you don't know what to do with it and how to make money and how to pay rent with it? And both those things go hand in hand. And
it didn't have to be a big part, it had to be a part.
Right. No, I'm with it, Svetlana. You got about 10 degrees. We could at least took one business class in music school. That's you know what I mean? Wouldn't have took up too much time. Look, hey, we gotta go though. We gotta wrap it up. But before we do, I want to give you an opportunity to tell all the people where they can sign up for your marketing classes, your branding classes.
Oh gosh.
Where they can buy your CD and generally connect with you on the interwebs.
Well, the reason I dropped my last name in artistic realm, which is maybe a mistake because Svetlana is probably the most popular name, Russian name, right? Is because nobody can spell or remember my last name. So Svetlana Jazz is my social, Instagram, Facebook stuff. And Svetlanajazz.com is my website where you can buy anything you want. If you go into projects, you can see different things I'm doing. If you go into shop, go there first, buy stuff there. Or just be a sucker who streams and, pays nothing. So no judgment though. Yes, judgment.
Don't be a sucker, y'all. Go make sure you don't stream it. You know what I'm saying? You can stream it, but also go to Bandcamp and buy it. And
I know, but you know what? It used to be even 3-4 years ago. Like you go to a concert, you play a concert in Florida. There are folks there who are like retirement communities. They line up to buy a CD, and now they're like, no. Are you on iTunes? I'm like, what? Stop it.
Too.
Yeah.
Old people got hip. That means something new is around the pike. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
All right, y'all. This Svetlana, thank you so much for coming on the Working Artist Project.
It was super fun.
Yeah.
My main goal achieved.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was a true pleasure to get to sit down and listen to your story and get to hang with you for a little bit.
Thank you, Gregory. Appreciate it.
All right, y'all. My name is Darrian Douglas.
And I'm Gregory Agid.
We'll catch y'all later.